That's just sports, baby.
Crowd goes wild, strawberry ice bringing fire and style. Reds, Bengals, Bearcats, all in my zone. This is my stage, my mic, my throne. Boom, like a hammer, I'm breaking the game. Strawberry ice, you're gonna know my name. Sports Talk Thunder, hear the podcast roar. Cincy slide is kicking down the door. Step into the ring where the passion ignites. Talking sports all day and all night. From the field to the court to the roaring stands. Strawberry ice with the world in my hands. Boom, like a hammer, I'm breaking the game. Strawberry ice, you're gonna know my name. Sports Talk Thunder, hear the podcast roar. Cincy slide is kicking down the door.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the show. This is Sports with Strawberry Ice. I'm your host, Iceman Jeff Trunable. And as always, I'm bringing you sports from a West Side point of view right here in the great city of Cincinnati, Ohio. And as always, I'm coming to you live from the Ice Cave. And the Ice Cave is brought to you by Priority Lawn and Landscaping. If you guys need your grass cut, you need some paper patios done, I don't know, you've got this just yard you want to get fixed, do me a favor, think Priority Lawn and Landscaping. Actually, don't think it, call them at 513-430-6114. That's 513-430-6114. You can also follow them on Facebook. I always suggest that because you can see the pictures of the projects that they've done. And when you call them or message on Facebook, do me a favor, tell them you heard about them from Sports with Strawberry Ice. What is up to everybody in the chat? We have one person in there. I know it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Stranger, what's going on? Go Reds. Go Bengals. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the day before July 4th. But when you get a guy who has been on the radio, I found this out yesterday. He talked about it on the show yesterday. He's been on the radio in Cincinnati for 17 years. That's a long time. This is his second time he's been on my show, so I appreciate that. But he is the one and only Mo Egger. What's up, Mo?
What was that just came across the screen?
That was your picture. Here, I'll show you.
Wow.
Yeah, you're in the tree. See, watch it. You're in the tree.
Man, that's
a good looking guy right there.
It's not a good looking guy. That's an impressive use of graphics. Nice job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So what's going on, man? You ready for the July 4th weekend? You got any big plans coming up here, or are you a fireworks guy or what?
I have an 8-year-old, so we have to be a fireworks family, which I guess we're going to entertain the rest of the kids. I'm going to spend the 4th of July weekend either standing over a grill or floating in a pool. That
don't sound too bad, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll be. I've been looking forward to it for a while, so I'm excited. I'm at work today. It's the day before a 3-day weekend, which means I'm here by myself because nobody else is here.
Hey, I'm here by myself too. I am. Ice is unsupervised. My wife and daughter took off and went to Myrtle Beach for a weekend. So,
oh man,
yeah. So the fun part is I get to help my son and daughter-in-law move all by myself. So once I get, that's why I wanted to do it at 1 o'clock. Well, you can't do it at 5:30 anyway, but 1 o'clock. So after I get done here, I get to go sweat my ass off and go move a whole bunch of stuff. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Who moves during the summertime? Like that's a spring or fall activity. Nobody. What are we doing? Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, this is their first house. When I bought my first house, we moved in, I want to say February. Mm-hmm. So it was freezing cold then. It's going to be hot as hell now. So, 25-year difference. I don't know. There is no good time to move. I hate moving. I don't know about you. I hate moving. I've been in this house for 21 years, and I don't plan on moving anytime soon.
Well, I have moved... I think I have moved 7 times in the last 13 years.
Wow, that's 7 too many for me, brother.
Yeah, byproduct of divorce, So
yeah, that kind of makes you have to move out or change addresses.
One of the reasons why you stay in a marriage is you don't have to move. So there you
Exactly.
go. Yeah.
Exactly. I saw your video you did. You got some Skyline chili dip ready for July 4th?
Well, yeah, it's half gone, so I'm gonna have to make a new one tonight. But yeah,
Dude, that was delicious. I made it before.
there was no chance that was going to make it through 48 hours before our friends and family arrived. So I have to make a new one tonight.
Well, good thing it's nice and simple. I am not a cook, but I can definitely make some Skyline chili dip, and it's delicious.
Skyline chili dip is idiot proof. Yeah. I think pretty much anybody. I mean, if I can make a Skyline chili dip and figure out a way to do, and by the way, it takes like 15 minutes. If I can make a Skyline chili dip, pretty much anybody can.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel about it too. But hey, all right, let's get into this. So the Reds had their series against the Boston Red Sox. Chase Burns got lit up. I'll start out with that first. I know Rob Dibble was on Cincy 360 and kind of talking about maybe Chase was tipping his pitches. No, he had to be. I mean, they were launching the first pitch. They were up there ready to swing. He had to be tipping, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that points to that being a likelihood, right? The Reds certainly did not shoot down the suggestion that he was tipping his pitches. The Red Sox, Alex Cora, their manager, is well known for being able to read these very subtle clues that are not, necessarily evident to the untrained eye. But whether or not he was tipping his pitches, the pitches he was throwing were fat. I mean,
they were very good. They were spitting right in the middle of the plate. I will give you that too.
That's the thing. I mean, it's one thing to tip your pitch. It's something else to tip your pitch and then throw a bad pitch. And unfortunately for Chase, it felt like it was a combination of the two, where the Red Sox were sitting on, maybe his breaking ball, and he was just leaving it out over the plate. He certainly did that with his slider a couple of times. But this is part of the learning process. And so, what they're doing with him is interesting. He was still waiting to see who was going to draft him a year ago. He was a college student a year ago. Right. When they took him with the second overall pick, there were some folks who thought, maybe they reached just a little bit, but I think everybody acknowledged he had a chance to get to the big leagues pretty quickly. But they're asking him to learn on the job on a team that has a chance to make the postseason. I mean, they're not giving him end of the season innings in games that don't count. They're not putting him in mop-up situations. They're asking him to start games against good big league teams in the thick of a playoff hunt and be a part of an otherwise really good starting rotation. So they're asking a lot of him. So there's, I guess, two different ways of looking at this. If he succeeds, and like Terry Francona said after the game the other night, I can't wait to see how he does in his next start against a really good Philadelphia lineup. Yeah. Maybe what happened against Boston proves to be a teaching point, and he learns from it, and he takes off, and he goes from there, and the Reds have Chase Burns in their mix. If not this year, then you wonder where's the starting pitching depth going to come from the next time there's an injury, or if there's a snag with Hunter Green, or if the season sort of necessitates a starting pitcher coming from somewhere else. And so I think how he pitches against Philadelphia and then how he pitches in his next start, which I guess would be against Colorado next week at GABP, I think that's going to be really interesting, because I think it's going to give us a clue as to what role he might have on this team moving forward, if he has one at all.
Yeah, the thing is, if they keep him up here all year long, it's not like he's – say the Reds do make the postseason, it's not like he's going to have any innings left to pitch in the postseason, or maybe down the stretch, because you remember 2023, Andrew Abbott, he was out of gas. I mean, he tried, but he was out of gas. And that's the same thing that's going to happen to Chase Burns. They're just not stretched out. Their arms aren't strong enough to go that many. Start college, you only start once a week. Here it's every fifth day. And it's 100. You want to try to pitch over 100 innings. Well, they used to anyway. But you want to pitch a lot. You want to pitch a lot of innings, and that's taxing on an arm, and young guys just aren't ready for it yet.
Yes. Look, what they're doing with him now in terms of usage fits in their original plan, right? It's not like they had shut him down and then called him up, or called him up and exceeded what they were going to do innings wise. What they were doing was, we're breaking the glass. We're using him because Hunter Green's hurt, Wade Miley's hurt, Chase Petty's maybe not ready, Rhett Lauder's not available. their other options had dried up. So he was the best option for here and now. But I think even they would acknowledge, like, in a month, they don't know what his role is going to be.
Right.
Maybe they go to a 6-man rotation if Hunter Green's healthy. Maybe they spot start him here and there. Maybe they send him down to Louisville. Maybe they put him in the bullpen. Like, clearly, you're right. There is an innings limitation for Chase Burns, and there should be, right? There is for a lot of guys. For a lot of guys who are, at that stage in his career. But what they were doing with him was, look, we don't know what's next. We don't care about what's next. We're trying to win games right now. It helped against the Yankees. It did not work against Boston.
Exactly. And he's going against 3 juggernaut teams. First the Yankees, then I know the Red Sox are down this year, but you see they had pretty good offensive scheme against him. And then he's got Philly. So he's got 3 pretty good teams to start off the bat here. But one thing I want to get into, CES last night, hit a grand slam. And I said this at the beginning of the season. I was talking to Logan 12, Richard Skinner, about this. Me and him were kind of on the same boat. That CES, in my opinion, was an important bat for this team because since they didn't really go out and get a power bat or anything, they were relying on him to be that 4-hole guy. Now, he hasn't been healthy. There's nothing they can do about that. But when he has been healthy, he unfortunately hasn't been that consistent. Do you believe they're still counting on him, or is there any chance in hell they're going to trade for anybody? Because they're going to have to get a power bat in the middle of this lineup, I think, if they're serious about contending for the playoffs.
Yeah, they need a thumper. And I don't think it should matter what position the thumper plays. Now,
right.
Everybody could use a thumper. To go and get a power bat is going to cost a lot. So are the Reds willing to pay the freight?
Sure.
Sure it is. But you can't use, he plays first base as a disqualifier because you have Christian Encarnacion Strand. As awesome as last night was, as cool as it was that he hit the 3-run double against the New York Yankees, as awesome as his series when he came off the injury list and helped beat the Diamondbacks was, I would laugh at them if we found out, the Reds had a chance to acquire a bat, but the guy plays first base, and they said no because they have Christian Encarnacion Strand. First of all, CES could play third base. You have a DH. So I just want a bat, and where he plays, then the dominoes will fall. If it's a corner outfielder, okay, we'll figure out what to do with Will Benson and Jake Fraley, maybe even Austin Hayes. If it's a third baseman, okay, I mean, then, we'll figure out what Noelvi Marte's role is going to be. Like, I want the added bat. That said, the role that CES is supposed to play is a role that nobody has really filled this year, and that's a guy who's a legitimate home run threat who's not Ellie De La Cruz.
Right.
And so that's the idea here. I think this is a really interesting season for him because he's 25 years old. So he's not exactly old, but he's not exactly 22. We make decisions on players more quickly than we used to, maybe for the better, maybe not so much. I think if his numbers look like they do now at the end of the season, then we're going to spend the offseason talking about finding somebody else to play first base on an everyday basis, and then maybe changing CES's role. But look, the reality is, if the Reds do acquire a big bat, it's not going to be for another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the All-Star break. They have 4 weeks worth of games that are going to greatly determine what their strategy is, and CES being a positive offensive contributor as he was last night in a role that he was thrust in because of the Spencer Steer wrist issue, he's got to do more of that. And I think he's got to do more of that regardless of what they acquire from the outside. But again, if you tell me, they're good at first base, they don't need a big bat if he plays first base, I think if that's your point of view, frankly, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, if you can, I'm with you. If we get a big bat, I don't care where they play. Matty Ron here out in Arizona says Gino is available. Now he plays third. Now you had Marte who hit a grand slam last night in Louisville. Now this is where I'm at with Marte. Last year it seemed like they rushed him up to hurry up and get him back up there, and he never got on track to where he was his rookie year. He was trying to prove everybody wrong. It wasn't the PEDs, yada yada yada. This year, he started to minor leagues. He took his lumps or whatever, got himself straightened out, and he was starting to hit line drives. He was pretty hot when he got hit, when he got hurt. Now, my question for you is: he hit a grand slam last night. Are you running down and picking him up and bringing him back up here? Me personally, I'm like, let's go down there and make sure that this is a real thing, and then bring him up. You let him cook down there for a little bit more, or you bring him up quickly?
I'm getting him up here ASAP.
Yeah. Right.
I'm giving regular at-bats to Santiago Espinal at third base.
True. That is true. Yeah.
So,
point.
You can stash him if you like what you have. Do we like watching Santiago Espinal and nothing against Santiago Espinal, who's a versatile piece and a good bench player, and in the right role provides
he's a bench player. He's not a starter.
Yeah. So, and Noelvi Marte, before he got hurt, was hitting. I think his OPS was 864. Yep. So, I look, these next 4 weeks, you're doing as much fact finding as anything. It's interesting you mentioned Eugenio Suarez. Now, sign me up for Gino for a lot of different reasons. He could walk at the end of the year, so there's no long-term commitment. He's a beloved player. We know what he brings to the table. That's well established. Why are the Arizona Diamondbacks, though, in sell mode? They're a game and a half behind the Reds. So,
I don't know.
So,
that's the rumors. Go ahead.
Right. So I guess what I would want to know is, like, if you're going, well, we're going to get a Eugenio Suarez at the deadline, what if the Diamondbacks win like 10 of their next 12?
Right.
Or, so maybe they're in a position where right now they're like, man, we don't know if we're buyers or sellers. I think Arizona right now is dead at 500, 43. So they could be one of those teams. Frankly, maybe the Reds are one of these teams where we don't know what we are. And let's see how things unfold over the next couple of weeks. And if we tank, we're going to trade Eugenio Suarez. But if we catch fire, well, cool, we're good. Let's go. We were a World Series team 2 years ago. So I guess the point for me is, if you're hitching your wagon to the idea that they're going to trade for a Eugenio Suarez, are you sure he's going to be available? And I guess I would ask, if I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan, is he going to be available even if we're in it? And right now, we're not that far from contention. So there's that. So between now and then, I think you got to find out what you got in Noelvi Marte. In the short term, I think you're offensively at least getting an upgrade from the regular usage of Santiago Espinal. Hopefully Noelvi Marte hits the way he was before he got hurt. But again, like, even if he does, and Eugenio Suarez is available, or a third baseman who can hit, are you not going to make that trade because you have Noelvi Marte? Like, I want offensive upgrades, and I don't care where they come from. But, yeah, your original question, would I call up Noelvi Marte now? He would be in the starting lineup tomorrow at 1:35 in Philadelphia if I was in charge.
Now, one thing I'll say, your coworker there, who I've listened to forever, Lance McAllister, always says this: you don't pick the season picks you. Mm-hmm. And right now, and like, I'll say it like this: Mo, I am sipping the Kool-Aid. I'm not taking big gulps of the Kool-Aid yet, because I've seen this time and time with these Reds teams. They start off, or they get to the All-Star break and they're hot, and then they fall on their face after the All-Star break. I'm more, and probably ownership's feel like that too. Let's see what happens after the All-Star break. But the thing is, though, I don't want them to do what they did. 21? They finally made a trade at a trading deadline, but by the time they did it, the Reds were 4 or 5 games out of first place, and it was too late. That's what I don't want them to do. They need to be more proactive, but I think after the All-Star break.
Well, I think these next 3 series are going to go a long way toward determining what they think they are. Right. They go to Philadelphia, which is not going to be easy. The Miami Marlins have been one of the hottest teams in baseball recently. They come here. And then they get the Colorado Rockies, who, frankly, the Reds should sweep the way they did in Denver. So, but I think how they play over these next 10 games could certainly influence what the strategy is at the deadline. I go back to 2 years ago. A lot of people look at 2 years ago and go, well, they should have made a trade. And had they made a trade, maybe they would have been in the postseason. And I agree with that. I think the difference, though, between 2 years ago and this year, 2 years ago, there was a gaping hole. A gaping hole. The starting pitching was among the worst in all of baseball. And so, as fun as it was 2 summers ago, watching Matt McClain come up and Ellie De La Cruz come up and Andrew Abbott come up and Will Benson join the team and later on CES and Noelvi Marte, that entire summer we waited for their awful starting pitching to catch up to them. And it did. And it did. Yeah, This year, one of the reasons why I'm optimism is there's nothing like that. there's no area of the team where you're like, you know what, this area is so bad that it's eventually going to catch up to them. Now, they've been pretty bad against lefties, but their offense isn't great. It needs help, but it's not like it's atrocious. It's not the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Right.
And so one of the reasons why I'm optimistic that they can hang in there is I don't think there's a just gaping hole. Mm-hmm. That said, there are too many deficiencies for me to believe that they can get over the hump. Right. And so I think they're good enough right now as currently constructed to hang in there. Certainly is going to help if they get Hunter Green back healthy. Certainly will help if Jake Fraley comes back and doesn't have to have surgery until after the season. Certainly will help if Matt McClain hits better in the second half than he did over the first 2 months of the season. But I think they're in a weird spot where, as currently constructed, I think this team is good enough to hang in there. I think as currently constructed, they're just flawed enough that they can't win unless they get some help. Now, where do you apply the help? Because they need offensive help. Yes. They obviously could use bullpen help. And you mentioned Chase Burns. If the clock is ticking on his innings, or if we determine he's not ready, do they have enough starting pitching depth? And so I think one of the more interesting questions is, like, if the Reds have a lot of different options out there to make a deal, but they're only willing to make one, what deal do they make? Do they make it about a bullpen arm? Do they make it about a right-handed bat? Do they make it about a power hitter? Do they make it about a starting pitcher? My guess is the answer to that last question is no. But I'm optimistic as much as we're all conditioned to, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't think it will, because I don't think this team has a glaring, huge, gaping hole the way the team 2 years ago did. But like the team 2 years ago, I felt like that team could have used help from outside. I think this team could as well. And I think the other part of this that needs to get talked about is, I think these players are paying very close attention to what the front office is doing. Yeah. And so, 2 years ago, we laughed at this. If you remember, at the trade deadline, they were in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And they added Sam Moll, and Sam Moll ended up being pretty good, but they didn't address their biggest weakness. And the reporting was, well, the guys in the clubhouse are pretty happy. They didn't want this broken up. I thought that was total BS. And it came out after the fact that it was. Yeah. I think if I was Nick Kroll, if I was Brad Mader, I would have a hard time looking some of these players in the eye and telling them, we didn't give you help. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd have a hard time explaining to Reds fans who are starved to watch this team advance in the postseason, we didn't see anything out there that made us feel like it was worth going after to help this team get to the postseason and win in the postseason. So I think the next month or so is going to be really interesting from the mechanical standpoint of what do they add to the team, but also the emotional impact of what they do or don't do in the clubhouse and among fans.
Yeah, 1995 was the last time we advanced to the playoffs or won a playoff series. I was 20 years old. I am 50 now. Wow. My children have never seen them advance in the playoffs. I got a 25-year-old son, a 21-year-old daughter. They've never seen the Reds win a playoff series in their lifetime.
I turned 18 on October 3rd, 1995. The Reds were playing the Dodgers that night in Los Angeles. It was the day that O.J. Simpson got acquitted. They would go on to beat the Dodgers on a Friday night later that week in Game 3. And after that game, as a student at the University of Dayton, a freshman, I drove to Cincinnati with my buddy to buy tickets for Games 1 and 2 of the National League Championship Series, which, of course, they lost, hit into 5 double plays in Game 1. They haven't advanced in the postseason since then. I'm going to be 48 this October 3rd. They have basically ruined my 20s, 30s, and most of my 40s.
Me too.
So I want to see them advance in the postseason at least once before I turn 50.
Yes, at least once before I die. That would be nice. That's kind of the way I feel about the Bengals with the Super Bowl here.
Right, yes.
How much time do you got? Been off for
I got some time. You're good.
Okay. All right, cool. So I do want to talk a little bit more Reds, and we can move into Bearcats and Dave Parker. But you brought this up on your show the other day, Ellie, and I've said this. Now I'm not one of the guys that says go throw him out in the outfield and don't just put him out there. I'm one that I think he is a future center fielder. The biggest reason is because Arroyo, if he can hit, is a Gold Glove shortstop that's already in your system. And Elliott's got range like crazy. He throws. He's got to get those under control. Has Tito Francona, they've addressed Tito with Elliott about trying to get these throws? Because he'll make great plays. and he'll sail it over the first baseman's head. It's like, you remember Sean Dunston back in the day?
Yeah.
He had Sean, that's what Ellie tries to do. He tries to he'll have time and he fires the ball over there. And I think it's getting in his head sometimes. But I don't know. Is there any addressing this of trying to get Ellie to get the throws down, at least for this year?
Yeah, I think the one thing I could tell you about Ellie De La Cruz is he has a reputation for being a hard worker. So I don't think it's because of lack of effort. I know he's worked at it. I know they've worked with him. But you're right, man. I mean, whenever a ball is hit in his direction, I prepare myself to be angry.
And he'll throw it. I'm going, oh, that's high. Like, and I think it's high almost every time he throws it. Like, that's how bad it's gotten.
So look, right now he's a shortstop. He's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to change positions. He's going to be the everyday shortstop for the rest of the season. It's on him to extinguish the talk of him changing positions. And look, there are a lot of players who, when they've gotten to the big leagues, until the rough edges of their game get ironed out, people always wonder, like, is that guy an everyday player? Or is that guy best suited to play this position? We know Ellie is an everyday player. It's up to him to smooth out the rough spots in his game so that we stop talking about him playing anywhere but shortstop until that happens. It's reasonable to wonder, is he better somewhere else? Is he better at third base? Is he better in center field? Now, the center field discussion, there's two ways to do it. There's throw him in center field, which I hear from those people all the time, and I go, why would you do that? You're setting him up to fail. But certainly there's a long line of players who have changed positions after they've been given a chance to work at those positions. And so I could certainly see the Reds getting to a point where they determine, in part because of other shortstop options, in part because Ellie just isn't consistent enough at the position, and in part because, can you imagine the amount of ground that guy could cover in center field where you go, you know what, in spring training, we're going to try it.
Yeah,
and by the way,
junior. Dude, his range, he's Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be, but that he has that type of range, that ability. And
look, it may fail. He may go out to center field, and he may be awful. You don't know, but the conversation, it's up to him to change it, and it's not going to change until he's a more reliable defensive player. He can do spectacular things. We've seen him. He made a really nice play in the first game of the doubleheader yesterday, but then there's the moments where, like, he drifts out into center field and he has no business being there, and he gets in TJ Friedel's way, and it's a double, and it leads to the game being tied, and it's like, Ellie. So it's up to him to put those behind him so that we stop talking about him changing positions. Until that happens, we're, I think, all going to wonder, would he be better suited somewhere else, and would his athletic talents best be applied to the outfield? I hope that he gets to a point where he's so good at shortstop that you go, you know what, we're not touching him, but he's not there yet.
Right. Now, the fly ball yesterday, one, Ellie should be going out that ball. Two, in my opinion, TJ Friedel is center fielder. I have no work close to a major league center fielder. I played outfield before. It's center field ball. Center fielder's got it. TJ has got to call Ellie off. He's got to take charge there. So, and I didn't Ellie get talked to? Weren't they trying to get him to stop doing that, going out that far to the outfield like that? Yeah,
and look, you appreciate the willingness, to try to make a play. You want a guy who wants to touch every ball, but I said on the air, like, sometimes you cross over into recklessness, and I felt like that crossed over into recklessness. And what you hope is that there are these teachable moments. I know they talk with him. I know Terry Francona talks with him. I know Barry Larkin talks with him, and you hope that we get to a point where the awesome stuff that he does significantly dwarfs those moments where you want to, slap yourself in the head, and we're not quite there yet.
But knowing how many outs there are,
right, simple stuff, right?
It's minute stuff. I mean, he makes way more better plays than he does these cringy ones, but it's still happens, and that's the problem. This can be cleaned up, and he will get it cleaned up. I mean, we got to remember, it's only his second full year in Major League Baseball. So he's still a young guy. So, but I do want to talk about the Cobra, Dave Parker. I know you talked a little bit about him this week. I haven't had a chance to actually talk about him, but When he got here in 1983, it was a huge deal. The first big time, first free agent the Reds signed, because, I mean, they didn't believe in signing free agents. If they did, we would have kept Tony Perez and Joe Morgan and Pete Rose and maybe won another World Series with a big red machine, but they didn't believe in it. So they signed the Cobra. His 1985 season was unbelievable. You got to know him as a guy coming into your radio station stuff there. What did he mean to you? Because we lost Pete Rose earlier this year. Now we lost Dave Parker. So there are two Cincinnati baseball players that I grew up loving. They're both gone now. What does that mean? What do those guys mean to you, especially Parker? What did Parker mean to you?
Well, it meant a lot to me because, as a kid, and I'm a little bit younger than you, but like as a kid, I started to develop an interest in baseball in the mid 80s when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. And the best player on the Reds was Dave Parker. Now, 85, you think Pete Rose and you think 41-92, understandably so, but Dave Parker, if the Reds win the West that year, is MVP. Maybe the MVP. Willie McGee won it. Willie McGee deserved to win it and was awesome for a Cardinals team that won 101 games, but Dave Parker was second in the voting and had a clear MVP case, and he was their best player. And so when you're a kid, like to me, Pete Rose was my dad's generation. Was my dad's guy, right? He was an old, graying, record-chasing player manager. I certainly understood, back in the day, Pete Rose was really good when I was 7 or 8 years old. But the guy who always seemed to get the big hit was Dave Parker. So start with that. Like the first year that I followed baseball, like day in and day out, and started reading box scores and catching up on standings and listen to games with my grandfather, Dave Parker was their best player. Yeah. And then you add to it, like, he had the coolest nickname, and we don't have that many cool nicknames anymore in sports. And there was just like, I said on my show the other day, we talk about like 5 tool players: hit for power, run, field your position, and throw. Dave Parker was a 6-tool player because he had all 5 of those tools, and the 6th tool was intimidation.
Oh yeah.
Presence. Like I used
on deck circle was
a sledgehammer in the on deck circle, or he stood as this hulking figure who, by the way, was an awesome athlete at Quarter Tech football and basketball, but he would stand right on top of the plate, and it's like, man, good luck throwing inside of that guy. Right. You want that guy charging out to you 60 feet? So there was just something about him as a kid that I was drawn toward. And it was a really fun time to be a kid and follow the Reds because they did have all these younger players. They had Barry Larkin and Eric Davis and Paul O'Neill and Tracy Jones and Cal Daniels and not to mention some of the pitchers. They had a lot of really good young players, and I just remember as a kid, like, it just seemed like Dave Parker was taking care of all those dudes. Now, as I grew older and I started to realize, like, man, before he was in Cincinnati, he was the best player in baseball for a couple of years in Pittsburgh. The Pirates in '79 win the World Series, and Willie Stargell was the co-MVP of the National League. Dave Parker was the better player. Right. Dave Parker was the best player on that team. And then, as you get older, you sort of have a perspective of how good guys are. He was awesome in Pittsburgh. Went through 2 years that I think really hurt his Hall of Fame candidacy. His last 2 years in Pittsburgh, where he was hurt all the time and missed, I think, close to 150 games over those 2 years. By his own admission, didn't take great care of himself off the field. He was involved in the Pittsburgh drug trials, which I think are the most misunderstood series of off-field issues in the history of sports, because it wasn't the players who were on trial. But then after that, I remember he left Cincinnati, and he was a big part of those A's teams, which were awesome. And
do you remember who we traded him? Who we got from Oakland back for him?
Was that Rio?
Yep.
Yeah, it was Jose Rio. So think about that. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, people forget this because they think of him in the 70s. And he was awesome in the 70s. And by the way, think of the role that he was thrust into, where he had to replace Roberto Clemente. Right? Yeah. And took a lot of crap for it early in his career because he wasn't Roberto Clemente. He was an all-star at 39 years old in 1990 with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yep.
That's how long, and wrap things up at the end of the 1991 season. So there's that. He just was if you're from here, I think you always take pride in the players who are from here who went on to have a lot of success. And there's a long line of those guys. But he did it with the Reds. And then subsequent to that, I've listened to a lot of those players who came up in the 80s who were a part of the success the Reds had in 1990 who talked about the impact that Dave Parker had. Mm-hmm. So you just take all of that. Plus, he was just like the coolest dude. And then, for me, being lucky enough I told this story on the air the other day. The first time I ever met Dave Parker, I was at a drive-through window at Popeyes. And the window opens, and Dave Parker hands me my food, and I'm on my way to my buddy's house to go watch a UC game, and I go, "Did you know Dave Parker works at the Roselawn Popeyes?" He's like, "No, Dave Parker owns the Roselawn." I'm like, "Oh, okay." But I remember just like holy crap, it's like my childhood hero. So, but obviously when he was stricken with Parkinson's, he became a tireless advocate for Parkinson's research and providing resources for people who are living with it. And I think that's admirable. And so every year he would come in to promote his golf tournament, and I would geek out. And it sucked in recent years watching Parkinson's kind of take over his body. And the last time he was here was, I think last year, he was in a wheelchair, but he still had that death grip of a handshake, and he was still so cool, and he was still so nice. And there was a time, 2021, I was having dinner with my wife downtown, and there was an event going on across the street at the Reds Hall of Fame. I was at Condado Taco Place right there at the Banks, and I'm sitting outside. And the event, you could tell it lets out, and Dave Parker and his wife go in to sit down to get something to eat. And my wife and I are leaving, and I'm like, screw it. Like, I'm sure he's going to remember me from having been on my show a few times, but maybe he doesn't, and maybe he's going to be a total dick. But I kind of wanted my wife to meet Dave Parker, and he was cool as hell. And he was sick, he had Parkinson's. He wasn't the mid 80s, just towering presence Dave Parker. He was just a sweet guy. And like they always say, don't meet your heroes, because what if they turn out to be, a-holes? I met one of mine, and he was the exact opposite. So I for years, I've campaigned for him to be in the Hall of Fame. I was elated when he got in. I'm heartbroken that he's not going to be there for it. But I take a great amount of comfort, and I hope his family does, in knowing that Dave knew he was going to get a plaque in Cooperstown, which is deserved and well overdue.
Exactly. I'm happy he got in. Like I said, it's sad that he's not going to be here. I mean, that's what stinks about Pete Rose too. He's going to get in, but he's not going to be here. I don't know what's going on, but your camera's frozen now. I have a very, very good still shot of you right now for some reason. It just happened on a live podcast. I don't know. You see, more time. There you go. You fixed it now. I usually go about an hour. Do you have that much time?
You're fine. I got like 15 minutes. Yeah, we're good.
All right, cool. That works. All right. So, Bearcats. We'll talk about Satterfield, the uniforms, and Wes Miller. I like the new uniforms. I like the numbers. They got the little points on the ends there. I think they're nice and clean. Now, the thing is, can they produce on the field? My problem with the last couple of years was it's like we get to a point where we start off, we're looking at we're going in the right direction, and then we fall off the cliff. I know you're talking about Sorsby, the quarterback last year, which I was with you. I thought we had ourselves I still think we have ourselves a Big 12 quarterback. But he regressed, I thought, the last 6 games. We needed one freaking win to be bowl eligible, and we couldn't get it. And that happened last year, too. It happened earlier last year, but it happened last year, or the year before last year. That's my problem with Satterfield. It's like they don't get better. They get worse, and that's not a good sign. To me, that's coaching. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's a fair criticism, and I think Scott Satterfield would even tell you that's a fair criticism. I put a lot on the quarterback play. I go back to last season. You're right, man. They're 5-2 going to Colorado. And even though most of us felt like, that's going to be a tough one to win, we thought this league isn't great. West Virginia's beatable. Iowa State's beatable. Kansas State's beatable. TC, they should have finished with 7 or 8 wins, and I think most of us would have thought pretty good year.
Yep.
For it to end the way it did with them losing those 5 games and Nippert Stadium being empty, it was really sobering. So I guess there's a few different thoughts.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm surprised he survived, to be honest.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I think money.
Yeah.
I think they're a little bit concerned with how it would have looked like. Hey, we moved to the Big 12. We're in this changing landscape of college football. We're going to stick with a coach for 2 years. Like, I think there's a genuine desire. And also, look, John Cunningham hired him. So, you're going to give the guy you hired every chance to prove he was the right hire. But this is a huge year for him. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be tough to be Scott Satterfield if they're on the outside looking in come bowl season.
Yeah.
I mean, and the reality is this, and I like Scott Satterfield a lot. I mean, he's a really interesting guy to talk to, and he's very, very accommodating to us. But call it what it is. When he got hired, it wasn't a very popular hire. So you start with that. So you have a lot of fans who were not really in to begin with, and these last 2 years have done nothing but confirm what they already thought. So you're working against public perception. That's not easy to do. So you've got to change some minds. And the only way you're going to change some minds is by doing something extreme. A lot of people have said, well, if they can get to 6-6 and just get in a bowl game this year, that's good enough. And I'm not sure it is if you're trying to change people's minds. And when we talk about changing people's minds, we're talking about people buying tickets, contributing to the program, helping with NIL, all that stuff. So I think they need to be significantly better this year. And look, the other part of it is, he's unpopular, and there's some skepticism about Wes Miller. And if you're the athletic director, you cannot have a football and a men's basketball coach that the public is out on, And you see athletics this century at least, and even going back beyond, they've always been good at one or the other. Right? Think of like post Bob Huggins, Brian Kelly got football going. Post Mick Cronin, Luke Fickell had football going. When football dipped with Tommy Tuberville, Mick Cronin had the basketball program cranking. That's not the case right now. So Wes Miller's going to get his chance, obviously, later in the fall. Scott Satterfield gets his first crack at it. I talked about this on my show yesterday. This Nebraska game to start the season, they're going to be, right now, most books have them at 6.5-point dogs. I think that number is going to go up. This is a chance for him to get people to pay attention and to energize the fan base. And I it's not apples to apples, but I equate it to the UCLA game, Luke Fickell's second year, where, man, there were a lot of people who were like, look, best case, this team can go 6-6, and they win that game. And that UCLA team was not very good that season, but it made people perk up, and it kind of re-energized the fan base. This Nebraska game gives Scott Satterfield a chance for that. I talked about Brendan Sorsby. I walked away. They played Texas Tech in late September last year and lost 44-41, and I was really encouraged after that game because I thought they went on the road against a Big 12, an established Big 12 school, and did what they wanted offensively. And that's going to play. That's going to translate to the rest of the schedule. And then if you remember, the next week they went to UCF. They won the game. Brendan threw a pick, and I feel like over the second half of the season, he was never the same.
Yeah, and too gun shy or something. He was too afraid to throw the ball downfield.
Yeah, and they might not have had awesome weapons, but it just felt like from then to the end of the year, the offense went into a shell, and Brendan was afraid to cut it loose. That can't be the case this year. And so for a kid who checks every intangible box, leadership, taking the job seriously, being a pro, helping recruit, I mean, every single box. But you got to be able to make the throws, man. And so I'm curious, can Brendan Sorsby make the throws? I'm hopeful that year 2 with this defensive scheme is going to yield better results. I certainly believe they're going to be a little bit better up front. And I'm really curious as to how much better the special teams is, because it was a train wreck at the end of last season. And not just field goals either. So, they kind of changed their approach midway through the offseason with what they were going to do on special teams. They weren't going to have a special teams coach. They were all going to do it collectively, and now they have a special teams coach. So we'll see, but this is a big, big year. It's kind of a put up or shut up year for Scott Satterfield. I find it hard to believe that if they go 5-7 again, or if they go 4-8, something like that, that we're going to be talking about how he gets a 4th year.
Yeah. Now my son is telling me it's StreamYard's using my wrong mic, but for some reason I can't get it to switch. I don't know. I'm having all kind. Your screen froze. My mic is on the wrong one, but that's okay. That's what happens when you do a live show, Mo. You know all about that.
Yes, I do.
It doesn't go right. All right, so let's get to Wes. And I'll just make my statement about what I think the Wes's biggest problem is. And I'll let you give your thoughts on it. I think Wes doesn't play big boy basketball. In the Big 12, he wants to have too many. He makes it easy for them to guard because if you can guard them on the outside, they're not going to throw the ball on the inside. They don't have anybody that can score in there. They've never had anybody that can score in there. University of Cincinnati is known for Oscar Robinson, Kenya Martin, Danny Fortson, big boy basketball. We haven't had that with Wes at all, and I'm very disappointed in that. I think that's been the biggest problem with this because and we have no guys to create shots for other players. Yes, Jizzle Jansen can go get his. Day Thomas can go get his too. They're not really creators. Pick and pop, any of that stuff. It's pass the ball around the outside and jack up a three-pointer, maybe try to dribble drive one-on-one. There's not a lot of cohesiveness on this offense. And on that fact, we don't rebound the ball good enough either because he doesn't get enough rebounders. Our defense is not as good as, Mick Cronin, Bob Huggins, stuff like that. He totally revamped the team. We got, 2 players left? I think Jizzle and Day, maybe one other person are left from last year. What's your thoughts on Wes? Am I far off base with my big boy basketball thoughts, or what's your thoughts on Wes and what could fix this?
Well, I think much of what you said is a reflection of the players that Wes has had, but he's been in charge of recruiting those players. And I was really bullish on their chances prior to last season. But once the season started, to me at least, it became pretty clear that they really didn't construct a roster as much as they acquired talent. Look, there were some players on last year's team that a lot of programs would like to have, and that a lot of programs went and got. Dylan Mitchell, I think, is going to be an all Big East caliber player. Josh Reed is playing in the Big Ten this season. Dan Skillings is staying in the Big 12 and playing for a Baylor program that won a national title not too long ago. And so, it wasn't so much the talent. I just don't think the pieces fit. Now,
that's a better way to put it. Yes,
it's completely fair to say, well, the head coach has to be able to put the pieces together. Reasonable, and I think Wes would tell you that. I think what I'm encouraged about this year is it feels like they put a little bit more of a premium on not just acquiring talent, but acquiring guys who had certain skill sets and can fit with the pieces that they already had. And so this offseason to me has looked more like one that's about roster construction, where last year it was about talent accumulation. And look, man, they acquired some players last offseason that a lot of programs would like to have. Some of them, really didn't work out here. The Arrington Page experiment really didn't work out, unfortunately.
Right.
But I feel like this year they'll put a team on the floor where the pieces fit a little bit better. Now, look, man, the gold standard in the Big 12 right now is Houston.
I hate Houston. I hate them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I don't because to me they look like the teams that I love the most.
They stole it from us. Yeah, what drives me nuts. That's what honestly, Mo, that's what drives me nuts is they are us. That's how Mick Cronin and Bob Huggins teams look. That kills me, dude.
So I think. And I think Wes would even tell you this. Houston basketball has an identity. Now, look, they change and they evolve. Offensively, when they first started to get things going in the American Athletic Conference, their offense was throw it up against the backboard and go get it, and that ain't the case now. I mean, they've had some guys who can make shots, create offense, play at an NBA caliber level. Like they've evolved. But there's still an identity there, right? I know what a Kelvin Sampson team looks like. I know what Houston Cougar basketball looks like. I know what they're going to do that's going to make them hard to beat every single night, every single year. With UC basketball, for the better part of 3 decades, I knew what the identity was. Now, there were times where it's like, boy, they're great defensively and they could rebound, but I wish they had another shooter, or I wish they would play a little bit quicker, or I wish they had a deeper bench, or I wish they had an NBA guy, that sort of thing. I think what has happened over these 4 years is we're still trying to figure out what the identity of UC basketball is supposed to be with Wes Miller as the coach, and that's not good. So the hope for me, and this might be a little bit more difficult to accomplish in the transfer portal NIL era where there's so much more player movement, but I want to see a team that in November, I know what its identity is supposed to be, and by February, it's solidified, it's confirmed. And then we talk about them playing down the stretch, maybe for an NCAA tournament berth, maybe for NCAA tournament seeding. And I know, here's what I can hang my hat on. Here are the 7 guys they could play. Here are the 8 guys they could play. Here's what they can do if this team plays them this way. Here's who fits in each. Like last year, even at the end of the season, I still wasn't sure who was supposed to do what. I still wasn't sure, like, offensively, who's supposed to be getting the lion's share of the shots?
Correct. Yeah.
Who's the guy that I'm going to throw it to if the other team's on a 6-0 run and I need a bucket to make sure it's not an 8-0 run?
We need a stopper. We didn't have that. A guy who gets shots. Yeah.
Who's the guy that's going to carry the offense at 3 minutes to go or down 5 and we need a bucket? Like by February, we need to know those things.
Yep.
And we didn't last year with a team that had talent. Again, like, look at where some of the players went. We're not talking about a bunch of dudes who dropped down a level. We're talking about guys who stayed at the exact same level. So it just never really took off last year. I think, Dan Skillings, I certainly hope Dan has a nice season at Baylor, but it felt like he was either not willing to or not ready to take on the role of, like, I got to be an all Big 12 guy. I got to be the best player in this team if we want any chance to compete in the upper half of the league. They need players like that. Now, I certainly have seen enough of Sean Abayev on YouTube and on TV to believe that he's got the game that can certainly translate to the Big 12 and help this team immediately. But, like, what about the hard games in January and February? So I've given, and I like Wes a lot, man. I've given him the benefit of the doubt the first 3 years. Last year, it was they lost.
Last year's the one that broke me. Last year, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" That's where, like, oh my god, he's got to win this year. For me, that's just my opinion. Yeah.
I think without a doubt, and it was them losing, but it was them losing at home and them losing at home in games. Was it the Kansas State game at the end of the year where it's senior night and you're thinking, like, you know what, this team will play desperate tonight, and they did the exact opposite.
Yeah, going through that game, I'm going, they're going to lose this game. They're going to lose this game. Yeah. I'm like, you can just tell. I'm like, I've seen this before. Like,
and I went on the air the next day and I just said, like, I've never said this about a UC basketball team, but, like, what is that? What was that? I've seen them lose. I've seen them get outmanned. I've seen them get a tough whistle. I've seen them have bad shooting performances. Sometimes the other team just whips you. Like, losing's one thing. It looking like it did at times last year is just not something that those of us who love UC basketball are ever going to accept. And we saw some of those things last season. So I am encouraged. I think they have a roster that can get to the NCAA tournament. I think they have a roster that can be far more competitive in the Big 12. But I thought the same thing last year. And so can Wes look? Even great coaches will have certain teams that they just can't piece the pieces together. Sometimes it happens that way. Yeah. But it can't happen again for Wes. And so I'm certainly hopeful that with a talented roster, he can make the pieces fit together better.
One last point on that. There's parts of that season they look disinterested. That's not good. And that's kind of the way I feel about the Kansas State game. They look disinterested or look beaten. And that's the scary part.
Yeah, I think of the West Virginia game on the road, which I believe they led with 9 or 10 minutes to go.
They had that game, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it just felt like when things started to go poorly, there was no one to There was no one to get things set back on track. Like
there's no stopper. There's no, like you said, there's no guy to throw the ball to, set your offense up and make the shot. There was, to me, that I think Wes wants Jizzle to do that.
Yeah,
but he hasn't done that yet. Day-Day, the only one that seemed like they tried to do it was Jizz or Day-Day, and it didn't work. It didn't come to.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Bearcat conversation, but I asked Chris Mack once a question about Trayvon Blewett, and what he said to me was, teams can never go in a 10-0 run against us because he'll just go get us a bucket. Like teams, right. You know, when we're up 8 on the road and they've cut it to 2 and the place is going nuts, he'll get a bucket for us. He'll get to the free throw line. He'll calm everything down. And he's like, look, scores a ton of points, but the value for me and a coach is I know the other team is never going to go 10-0 on us because Trayvon's not going to let it happen. So even when things are starting to slide downhill, he'll stop the avalanche. I don't think UC has had a player like that they've had good players. They've had some very good players, but I think it's been a while before they had a guy that's like, all right, we're on the road. You know, we were up 8. We missed a couple of free throws, and you know, it's gone from 8 to 2, and the crowd's going nuts. Screw it. I'm gonna regain control of the game for us. I don't know if Jizzle James can be that guy in his 3rd season. I don't know if Sean Abayev is going to be that guy in his first college basketball year. I don't know if it's going to be one of the players from outside. But to me, there were a lot of times last year, I think of the BYU game on the road. I think of a lot of games last season where the Kansas State game on the road where you could feel it slipping away. You could feel you could feel it falling apart, and they were powerless. Yeah, they were powerless against it, and I certainly hope that changes.
Me too, and it's. I like to be honest. Like that's kind of the way I felt like UC football too. The last 5 games. I mean, I was going, we're going to lose it, and I went to the University of Cincinnati. I dropped out. I was going to go for a communications degree. Dropped out after the first semester, but I did go there. So I bleed red and black. But and I'm the biggest homer there is. I'm the biggest optimist. I'm like, I think we're going to do good. Just anybody who's ever watched my podcast knows I think the Bengals are going to win Super Bowl every year. But for me to watch these games, they're going, dude, we're going to lose. And that's not good for just the fan base in general, for diehards going. And you can see that Nipper. I don't think that they're really the crowd went away too much there, but Nippert you did. And I have a question. I heard this that Sat does not like nip at night. Is that true? Do you know that for a fact?
I've never heard that. I think the lack of nip at night games has been a Big 12 and a TV thing. So I actually think they like the nip at night thing because I think it provides them more of a home field advantage than when they play at noon. I thought this a couple of times last year. Before they played Iowa State, Wes Miller said, nobody in the world thinks we can win. And before they played on the road against Houston, he said, nobody in the world thinks we can win. And he was right about that. I understand what he was doing. I understand the tactic. But when he said those things, I thought to myself, I've been a UC basketball fan since 1990. And there haven't been that many games, with the exception of, maybe the first 3 years with Mick. There haven't been that many games where you gave them no chance to win going in. There might be games where you thought, they're going to have to play a perfect game, or they're going to have to get 1 or 2 things to go right. It's hard to win on the road in high major basketball. We know that. But I want to get back to a point where I no longer assume that they lose before the game starts.
Right. That would be nice.
And I just,
God forbid that would be nice.
I don't want there to be any more games where you're like, what, they have no chance of winning tonight.
Yep.
And so that gap, between where they are and where Houston is and where Iowa State's been and where Kansas is usually, they've got to start to close that. It's hard to win. It's hard to win in the Big 12. It's hard to win on the road in the Big 12. Like, I understand that, but the fact that line was dropped twice this year, and again, I know what he was doing. A coach, it's nobody believes in us, that sort of thing. I don't want there to be any more games where you go, you know what, they have no shot. And unfortunately, in the Big 12, they've had games where going in, they have, I don't want to say no shot, but a minuscule chance of winning. That's got to change. That's got to. And to me, when those things go away, this program will have turned the corner, and I hope that happens this year.
Exactly. Mo, you're awesome. You've been on for almost an hour. We didn't get into the Bengals topic. I can get into that with you next time I have you on, which hopefully I'll get to have you on again. I appreciate you coming on. Do me a favor, if you got any, you don't write for the athletic or anything anymore. You got anything you want to plug or anything? You got your show, obviously. You can plug that for you.
Yeah, we have a show on ESPN 1530. You can listen to it on 1530 AM on your AM dial or on the iHeartRadio app. And we record all the shows and podcast them too, so you can listen. You can literally listen to me 24 hours a day. I don't know who in their right mind would want to do that, but that option is available to you if you're a total glutton for punishment.
Hey, and you can always do the talkbacks, which I do with Tony and Mo, or Tony and Audie.
I can't do the talkbacks on my show because they've made that such a big part of what they do that now if I do it, I'm like co-oping it from them. So And God love them for it. It's funny. They've made that such a staple on their show that like now it's like, well, we can't do that. So we have ceded that ground to Tony and Austin, the talkbacks, which is all theirs. That's fine.
Yeah, well, it's fun to get on there. They got their own Talkback Nation, Talkback President, all kinds of stuff. It's unbelievable. Mel, I appreciate it. You have a wonderful fourth, and like I said, I'd love to do this again with you sometime.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Take it easy. See you.
Yep. See you, man.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Mo is awesome. I don't know why my mic is on the computer. I clicked on this mic, and it doesn't want to give me that mic. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But thanks for watching. I've been live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch. You can follow me on all those, along with Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And, of course, I will be pulling up the sound later on tonight, which I pulled the sound off yesterday's show, and I put it up on the podcast, and it said it uploaded, and then I went and looked at it today, and it wasn't uploaded. So, I don't know what happened. But for the whole one of you that listens to the podcast, I don't think it's a big loss. But if you want to listen to the podcast, it'll be on BeatPod, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher Play, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. Please make sure you rate, like, and review. Leave a comment and a 5-star review so more Cincinnati fans can find my podcast. Also, shout out to the sponsors of the show. They are as follow: Priority Lawn and Landscaping. You got some lawns you don't want to cut, you got some landscaping you need to get done, and you just don't want to do it, or you got, I don't know, some idea of what you want to get done, but you just don't know how to do it. Think Priority Lawn and Landscaping. Don't think it. Call at 513-430-6114. That's 513-430-6114. You can also follow them on Facebook. I always recommend that because you can see videos and pictures of their work. And when you message them on Facebook or call them, tell Johnny you heard about him for Sports with Strawberry Ice. Also, the show is brought to you by T Properties, quality housing for quality people. Check out the website at www.tpropertiesllc.com for all your rental property management needs and your rental needs. And, of course, Meyer Window, Door, and More. The website is www.meyercincinnati.com. Check them out for all your window and door needs. I got them at my house. I highly recommend you get them in yours. They're energy efficient, easy to clean, great-looking windows. Again, Meyer Window, Door, and More. And, of course, my favorite brewery in the city of Cincinnati, it's Moorline Lager House. They are open July 4th. So if you guys want to go down, check out the river, check out Moorline Lager House, eat some delicious Moorline food, drink some delicious Moorline lager beer. Go on down there to the Moorline Lager House. They have a Rockin' on the River each and every Thursday. It is an awesome, awesome time. Make sure you guys go check that out tonight. Moorline Lager House. Well, that is it for me for this week. I'm obviously taking tomorrow off. Happy July 4th to each and every single one of you guys. Like I said yesterday, be safe out there. Drink a couple. If you shoot up fireworks, please stay sober. Alcohol and fireworks do not go well together, get that liquid courage, and you start doing some crazy stuff, you might blow some fingers and toes and ligaments off. So we don't want that. I want you to come back here Monday with all your body parts and check me out, listen to my show. Other than that, remember Houday for life and throw it up. That's your sports, baby. See ya!
Another great show. You guys still here? The show's over. You can come back tomorrow. I'm out of here. See ya.